Well, aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever had the worst 36-hour stretch of your life? Yes, you have. That's how time works. That's how worsts work. You have. But maybe it wasn't so bad that you knew it at the time. I don't think I'm in the worst 36-hour stretch of my life, but everything that could go wrong has. I did a podcast earlier today with Chris Lansdell where we talked about the New Japan G1 Climax. To date, it is about half over. We talked we talked about every single person, all 20. We went through all 20 guys and talked about their performance in the tournament so far. Finished the recording, found out only my half recorded. Nothing that Chris said recorded, and my half was really quiet. This makes no sense because we had done a test recording just before this. And I say that to say that's like the fourth worst thing that's happened to me in the last 36 hours. At least the worst thing wasn't watching the Great American Bash. It wasn't all that, but it did have an all that main event, which I really, really liked and did kind of pull me up from the depths. And that's what I'm going to hang my hat on, Nate. We're doing Great American Bash, which is an excuse every midsummer for this brand to put on two very special episodes full of championship matches where the championships never change hands because they are not in the plans. And they're like, oh God, we got to do Great American Bash, but we have no plans to change hands. I'm going to rile up a lot tonight, folks, because that's the state I'm in, but I promise I'm okay-ish.
I thought you were in Minnesota.
I am in Minnesota. Are you saying that I need to be nice?
No, you said that's the state I'm in. And I'm like, I thought you were in Minnesota. I'm trying to make a joke.
Oh,
it just
Nate,
flew right over your head, man.
Oh, Nate, I tells you. Okay, so let's talk about NXT for July, the whatever this is. Let's say 30th, 2024.
2024.
I was gone for 9 days. I was at the National Card Show in Cleveland. That's why I was not here last week. That's why I was not on with Tom. Really, really had to work to stay up to date on all the wrestling. Watched a lot of wrestling today. In order to do so, that trip started out, I flew Delta, which had the outage, which started the whole ball rolling on all this stuff that's happening.
By the way, CrowdStrike, if you're listening, I'm very mad at you. I'm just going to, as an IT guy, I'm going to leave it at that.
We flew out Saturday, which is to say I went to the airport on Saturday, and it was delayed 2 hours, then an hour, then an hour, then 2 hours, and then canceled. I spent all of my Saturday, not this last one, but the one before, at an airport. An airport I've been to many times. It's a good airport as airports go, but it's still an airport. I was there all day, and then I just went home again because our flight was canceled. 2 days later, we were able to fly out, although that one was delayed too. And then I had 7 very physical, very taxing days. And then I came home, and then everything started to go wrong. I tell you, family life's great.
That is
you wouldn't know it. Yes. But to talk to me, you would, Nate, I'm going to try.
Kelly's going to try.
Okay. Main event.
Kelly, you got
this show.
You got this.
I don't know that I do. Thea Hale versus Roxanne Perez. Probably shouldn't start with this because it was easily the best part of the show and it's only downhill from here. But this was a joy. These two with so many counters just put together such a great match. It's so great that these two are cast as perfectly as they are. Thea as the lovable underdog. I wrote in my report, Thea is playing the character that they thought Roxanne Perez was made to be. but she wasn't. Roxy was made to be this snotty heel, and she's so good at that. Even right after she finally puts this one to bed with the crossface, she just has the crap eating grin on her face. Just lovely work from both of them all the way through. We saw some spots that showed some light throughout the night, had some overwhelming stuff, and this was really, really a great way to end the show. So we've got some stuff to look forward to next week, but so far, this is the match of Great American Bash. It went 11-20. Perez wins with her 7th or 8th attempt at the crossface, as Hale kept snapping on the Kimura as well. Actually, no, she didn't win with the crossface. She hit Pop Rocks.
Yes.
Because she could not, because every time she hit the crossface, it got reversed. So that was the story. Had to hit Pop Rocks because Thea didn't reverse that. So there you go, 11-20. Thea Hale. I also wrote, if Thea's ship comes in, if the time works out, if she wins that championship, the place is going to go bananas. The problem, Nate, is Julia. Julia's coming, and she is almost certainly going to be the person to take that championship from Roxanne Perez. A bummer, because Thea is once again just in the wrong place in the wrong time. Kind of like being any other woman during the Asuka era. Nate, let's talk main event.
Yeah. Anybody that was in the women's division during Asuka's reign of terror over WWE or NXT rather, certainly had a bad time. But no, main event. I honestly thought this was an absolutely fantastic match. I think, like you said, probably the match of the night for me as well. Roxanne Perez is an absolutely phenomenal talent, as we all know. Her run as a heel, I think, has been absolutely phenomenal, especially contrasting it to her run as babyface. As a face, she's somebody that a lot of people did get behind. I just had a really hard time getting behind, which we've talked a lot about on the show. I don't want to necessarily beat a dead horse, but as a heel champion right now, she's absolutely phenomenal. I think she's doing exactly what she needs to do right now to keep the NXT Women's title important and relevant. She's absolutely killing it. Thea Hale, I think this might have been Thea Hale's best match. Again, somebody that I'm very, very, very high on. As she's 20 years old. I mean, she's still a kid. She's got all the potential in the world. I think the sky is the limit for her. She understands her character, and there's been such a great progression for her character, even just through the storyline, where they've kind of started to talk about her calming down a little bit and not quite being that crazy, bubbly, over the top, I'm going to say character, because that's what she's playing, character that she's been. With this kind of relationship that she's establishing with Ridge Holland, and I say relationship, I'm not saying it's like a romantic relationship or anything. It's just a good friendship where he's kind of guiding her and cheerleading her along. I think that story kind of, it's weird to say Ridge Holland played an important part in the story, but I think he did. And, we saw a lot more intensity out of her tonight. I thought the moves that they pulled off were flawless. There really wasn't anything that I noticed in this match, which made me went, ooh, that didn't look good. Like you said, crazy reversals, reversal after reversal after reversal. Thea Hale, part of the story of the match is Thea Hale trying to lock in the Kimura lock, and anytime she's locked that in the past, I can't think of a time anybody's actually not tapped out to it. She's certainly tried to lock it in on people and they've escaped, but once it's actually officially locked in, nobody seems to get out. And I liked how they kind of seemed to play on that a little bit with Roxy constantly rolling out, trying to put a crossface on, reverse the submission and get her own crossface on there. So like I said, I think this was an absolutely phenomenal match. Derek Hubbard agrees. Thea and Roxanne brought it. Probably a top 3 women's match of the year. I like this much more than the Lola Vice and Roxy match, and I thought this was better than Grace and Roxy as well. And I really liked Jordan Grace and Roxanne Perez, but I may agree with him there. I may agree with you, Derek. I think it was.
I do agree with Derek. I liked this one more than the others, which maybe is a stylistic choice.
Sure.
The mat reversals were just delicious, and as I say that, BJ in the chat said loved all the reversals. Yep, same. Don't get sick of those. So those were all good matches, but I think I got a chance. I mean, recency bias, but I've got a chance at remembering this one in a way that I don't remember the others. I'm also connected to Thea in a way that I'm not Lola and Jordan at this point. So there's that as well. As for you saying a relationship but not a real relationship, I was going to say they wouldn't do that, but then I remembered the May December thing they did with Aaliyah Mysterio and Blake Murphy.
Wow, I forgot about that.
Like there's significant years between them. That's better on paper, and then they're standing next to each other, and you see Blake Murphy's crow's feet, and Aaliyah's as fresh faced as she can be, and you know what? Let's not dredge that up.
Between them or something.
What's that?
Wasn't it like 18 years difference between them or something like that?
I don't know that I looked into it at the time, but that number feels like it could be possible. Buddy Murphy. I said Blake Murphy. Thank you.
Wow, you did, and I didn't even pick up on that.
And I actually think I said it twice.
You did. You
Blake
totally
and Murphy.
did.
What's so odd is I do NXT 8 years back. I have been covering a lot of Blake and Murphy in the last year, a lot. But I'm also getting to a point where I'm not remembering names. During the show
that's just age, man. That's just age.
Lindberg, I know. I texted you during this show, during the segment with Tatum Paxley. I had to look up Kalani Jordan's name. I really like Kalani Jordan, and I had to look up her name. I literally, my last Google search is NXT North American Women's Champion. That is how old I am getting. Yes, Derek says, is Buddy that old? Wow. I
just looked it up. It's not quite 18 years. But okay. Buddy's actually a little younger than I am. 30. He's 35.
Okay. So still a little iffy considering how old Aaliyah was, but
yeah.
But let's move on from iffy stuff.
But now Buddy's married to Rhea Ripley, and come on.
Yeah, and previously he dated Alexa Bliss. I think life's been good to old.
It sounds like life's been very good to Buddy Murphy.
To old Buddy Murphy, even if certain idiots can't remember his name. Okay, let's talk opener. Why the heck not? Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson versus Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. This went 9:55. I thought it was a nice touch to have Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill weigh in and say they were looking forward to seeing who was winning this match, to see who they were going to face at SummerSlam, because we all know how this is going. But, throw something on it, put a little stake on it that way. So, of course, Fire and Dawn win this. With that move that they did to Jakara. I didn't write down finishing moves this week. I normally do. Ethan Page showed up afterwards to run down Oro and said that they should get used to losing. Of course, he got rolled up again. Mensa rolled him up, and Then the two women ran into position and counted him to the mat for another 3 count. I believe Jakara was a little late, so they didn't count in tandem, which would have been the better visual, but whatever. And then the two had their contract signing later with Ava in a pretty slight role this week compared to the oodles and oodles of Ava that they normally are liking to throw at us. So anyway, Lash and Jakara, of course, do not win the championships. It's Fire and Dawn who will face Bianca and Jade in a few days' time at SummerSlam. But on this opener, as well as the Oro Mensa Ethan Page business.
Yes. So I thought this was a good opener. Like you said, I didn't think there was a chance in hell that Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson were going to be walking away with women's tag team gold. But it was still a fun match and a fun story. Especially, kind of started last week. What team is going to wind up, who's the better team to face the tag team champions? Lash Legend, Jakara Jackson obviously came out on top last week. Saw them in our opening match here tonight. Like you said, it was a cool touch to have Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill come up, and kind of talk a little bit about about the match for SummerSlam and promote that match for SummerSlam. We all knew which way this was going to wind up going, with Alba Fire and Isla Dawn coming out on top. Yeah, that said, though, this was still a good match. I think this really showcased, I wouldn't say it was a showcase necessarily for Metaphor or the women from Metaphor, but I think they were able to kind of get their stuff in. They looked great, as did Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. But to me, it really felt like they were down there to elevate Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend, even though they didn't win. As we all know, just brushing elbows with certain people sometimes can elevate you a little bit, especially if you guys, if they have they have a good showing, a good outing, good match. With Ethan Page and Oro Mensa, this is another one where I would be so stupidly surprised if Oro Mensa winds up walking away NXT champion at Great American Bash Night 2 next week. As much as I like Oro Mensa, and they're trying to position him as a main guy, and I feel like they've done a decent enough job trying to I saw a comment from BJF talking about, I just put it up on screen right now, saying that at least you didn't say Jackson Murphy instead of, anyway.
Jackson Riker is still one of the worst names they've come up with.
It's up there.
That guy's had a lot of bad names in wrestling, a lot of lame names. Jackson is. It wouldn't have been so bad if it wasn't Jaxson. They're like, okay, how about instead of an army brat, we make him sound like a kindergarten brat? What was this name? Why?
I know, it's so bad.
He ain't all that, so I'm not worried about it. But yes, right. I did not say Jackson Murphy, in part because I would never, ever, ever have thought about Jackson Riker again. And damn you for reminding me that he existed.
But no, so like I was saying, Oro Mensa, he doesn't feel to me like he's a main event guy just yet. I think they've done a good enough job building him up for this particular match as somebody for Ethan Page to fight. But I don't think anybody is expecting Oro Mensa to walk away with the title here, especially where part of the story is Ethan Page being afraid of hearing the number 3, 1, 2, like Oro Mensa in that sit-down interview in Ava's office a little bit later. Oro Mensa is like, I'm going to beat you in the ring, 1, 2. And when he got to 2, Ethan Page, don't you say it, and that was a thing we saw last week. And I think the week before that as well, he's afraid of that number 3. So I think this is going to be kind of good because we're coming into this match next week. People kind of have that fresh in their brain. He's afraid of the number 3. Maybe Oro Mensah will capitalize on that, for the casual fan, I guess. But the rest of us, the non-casuals as we are, I don't think any of us think he's walking away. Oro Mensah being he pronouns. I don't think Oro Mensah is going to be walking away with any gold whatsoever.
Derek Hubbard in the chat says this is one of the many matches where I'm left thinking that Lash is improving. Unfortunately, in the past, each time I have thought this, she has followed it up with a lackluster performance. Yeah. Again, I think Derek is speaking right out of my brain here. This is something I've noticed that there was a lot of one step up, one step back. She was slow to improve. They really, really had to like what they saw in certain areas of her. And what that was the sass she was able to bring to, what did they call her little talk show?
Lashing Out with Lash Legend.
Lashing Out with Lash Legend, which had some slight highs and extreme lows, but it really did show, even if the writing was not great, which it normally was not, it did show that she could carry herself on the mic pretty well. So obviously somebody who had that part of it down, they were going to, and is athletic and is extremely strong, as we saw with her and Otis. That's somebody that they want to invest in. So thankfully they stuck with that. And still, yeah, we see little mistakes from her. Like they trust her with a longer match now. And now she's actually in there with a greener partner, and Jakara is the one who's actually being more, they're holding her hand through the match a little bit more. But I've noticed that about Lash as well. I think that they're committed to her, but it's one of those things where she's been there a really long time, and I still don't see a call up feeling imminent.
Yeah.
So what can you say? Hank and Tank, they were the hosts, and they did a heist, and they did some interviews, and they talked to Roxanne Perez, where Tank was trying to put as many Post-it notes on his face as he could in a fixed amount of time.
World record.
All of this was terrible until the thing with the Post-it notes. That was actually pretty okay. And the Post-it notes played along because his sweat knocked all of them off except for the ones right in front of his eyes. So that part worked. I guess if you're going to use Hank and Tank in a non-wrestling role, give him a shot, whatever. That opening scene, that heist was really, really dumb, Nate.
It was.
And I love dumb, but I love good dumb. And you love good dumb and bad dumb. Did you like this dumb?
Not really. No, it didn't quite work for me. I mean, and like you said, I sometimes love bad, stupid humor. I wouldn't say some of the humor that like Vince would put out onto the main roster, but sometimes some of the things people are like, I don't understand that. I'm like, that was hilarious. So I've got weird tastes in humor, I guess. But no, the opening segment, like I said, it didn't really work for me. The rest of Hank and Tank segments, though, I thought were actually pretty okay. I think the Post-it thing, trying to put as many Post-its on yourself in 60 seconds as you possibly could, that was kind of funny. It was actually pretty funny, especially like you said, especially where the sweat, just they wouldn't stick to his face except for the ones that are covering his eyes. So I think it certainly works. I think they actually made pretty decent hosts, and a lot of times, I was actually talking about this last week with my buddy Jobin that jumped on the show here. A lot of times we see these hosts come in like Sexy Red or Hulk Hogan or whoever that's going to be a host of some sort of a show, and then you see them once, maybe twice, and they're not really in anything super prominent, or if they are, it's like a contract signing and they're just kind of being shown on screen or something like that. Where they kind of use them in interviews, like in backstage interviewers instead of Kelly Kincaid. I think it kind of worked. It played to their strengths. It played to their comedic timing. So I'll give them like it's not quite a thumbs up, but it's not a thumb sideways either. It's like in the middle there, like a 3/4 thumbs up. Yeah, I think it certainly worked. So yeah, I'm gonna let Corbin out real quick. I just got to open a door over there.
Okay, Derek Hubbard says, I get a Mojo Rawley vibe from Tank. I do not use this as an insult. I enjoy contagious enthusiasm in some cases. I would only call someone Mojo Rawley as an insult. I get what you're saying, but I had to watch a Mojo Rawley match today. Granted, it was only 22 seconds long.
Now
I
know why you're in a bad mood.
He got attacked. That is probably just part of, that did happen in the last 36 hours. So that's certainly part of it. Yeah, contagious enthusiasm. I would say Thea Hale and Tank have contagious enthusiasm. Like in baseball, you say hitting is contagious, and Mojo, it's more like syphilis is contagious. I don't feel it with Mojo, but I get what you're saying. So yeah. I can see some of the benchmarks you're saying, and maybe that's why I don't super love Tank yet, but I love what he's trying. You got to try to go big, because if you fail big, you can be pulled back. If you fail small, there's nothing to do with you, and you're just kicked to the scrap heap. So, yeah. So there you go. That was our opener. Let's talk Heritage Cup. Lots of this was not on TV. Lots of stuff was on the commercial break. Tony D'Angelo versus Tavian Heights. This was more an excuse to get Ren Sinclair a little bit closer to being a member of No Quarter Catch Club. So Tony D defeats Tavian Heights. Nobody wins. We saw the whole first round. Second round was almost entirely during commercial break. Third round, really quick win for Tony D. Fourth round, really quick win for Tavian Heights because Ren Sinclair came in and she fired him up. So apparently that's her superpower. She can make a dude win really soon. And then Tony D won the fifth round. So, whatever. But Tony D is still your champion. But this wasn't about him. This was about No Quarter Catch Club and Ren Sinclair. And Nate was patting himself on the back because he remembered who Ren Sinclair was this time, because they are throwing a lot of new women at us at once. And it's tough to remember every name, especially when you're getting a bit older, as we are. So Ren is one I don't have trouble with, but apparently I have trouble with people named Blake and or Buddy and or Murphy and or Jackson, or Kalani. That's new. I never had trouble with her name one time until today. And why her? Why would anyone forget her? Anyway, so that was our Heritage Cup match. I love the Heritage Cup match style so much that I wish somebody better than Tony D had it, but I've probably said that before. Anyway,
I think we all have.
These two, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I'll be honest. I thought Tavian Heights might actually walk away with the NXT Heritage Cup, and reason being is he's an Olympian, and the Olympics. Wow, I can talk. The Olympics are currently happening if you're living under a rock. So I kind of figured that might be a cool tie-in, an Olympian just winning the Heritage Cup. So especially where they kind of played into that with Tavian Heights' interview before the match. But then we get into the match proper, and Tony D scores the first pinfall. Tavian Heights winds up getting pumped up by Ren Sinclair and gets the second one. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe I'm right. Maybe that's what we're going to see here, and that's how we're going to get there. Ren Sinclair comes in, and I think she was mostly out in the crowd. I can't remember if she hopped the barricade or not after a while, but regardless, she hyped up Tavian Heights, and I'm thinking, all right, maybe we'll actually see this, and we'll get the Heritage Cup off Tony D'Angelo, because like Kelly just said, it's not the first time we're saying on this show that we wish somebody other than Tony D had that had the Heritage Cup. Nothing against Tony D for me anyway. I'm a fan. I personally have liked his gimmick and the body of work for the most part, especially now that he's starting to incorporate some more of his amateur wrestling background into his moveset and things like that. But he doesn't feel like the person that should hold the Heritage Cup. The Heritage Cup's always been, Axiom or Nathan Frazier, a smaller guy like that can move and that can have those kind of frenetic matches. Whereas Tony D, he's more of your WWE wrestler. There's just kind of the stereotypical WWE wrestler, and it kind of fits that mold. Whereas I felt the Heritage Cup was more for like, I'm going to say the indie darlings in that kind of a style, just for lack of a better term right now. But that said, I still think Tony D's had a pretty okay run with this so far. I would have liked to have seen the cup kind of go back to go back to the no quarter catch crew, I guess. But I was going to say kind of go back to somebody that is more in that, like I said, indie darling type of a move set. And
is it crew? Is it crew?
No, it's club? No quarter catch crew, not club. Yeah, I wasn't going to correct it.
I definitely typed club.
Yeah,
Nate,
that's okay. You can do a find and replace. It's easy.
How does a person age 5 years in 1 year? Because I think I've done that in the last 2 years.
You've aged 5 years and a year in the last 2 years? I'm confused.
I've aged 10 years in the last 2 years.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. I can't math.
That is what's happening.
My roommate is the only reason I graduated college, because we happened to be in the same trigonometry class. But I don't remember what I was talking about at this point. Tony D.
Well, let's talk about. Okay.
But no, I think I was more or less done talking about it. I really like what we see so far out of Tavian Heights.
Me too. I was going to add that.
Especially
no other notes. Really like him. Yep.
Yeah, especially if you contrast him to Damon Kemp, and I feel like Damon Kemp out, Tavian Heights in, kind of in that same type of a role. And Damon Kemp comes in with kind of it was his brother. It was Gable Stevenson that was the Olympian, not Damon Kemp. But still, comes in with a very similar fanfare to Tavian Heights, but didn't really deliver. I always was keeping my fingers crossed for him, but he is no longer with the company. But Tavian Heights, man, he's got, not only does he have the moves, but he also has the charisma. He can talk on the mic. I think this is a good pairing. I mean, he's probably the most charismatic person in No Quarter Catch Crew, and Charlie Dempsey's William Regal's son. I don't know, So Anyway, whatever you was going to say.
Ted DiBiase Jr. is Ted DiBiase's son.
That's true. Like I met them.
Not that it's. I think Charlie Dempsey is pretty okay. Better than okay. I think he's all right. I think he's got a future, but sometimes, Ava is Rock's daughter. So there you go. I take a lot of swipes at Tony D. So let me say I really, really liked this first round. The two of them going for the same thing and stonewalling each other on the same move over and over, going for a gut wrench at the same time. I really liked this first round for the same reason that I liked Thea Hale and Roxy in the main event, although that was quite a bit better. I really, really liked this first round. So Tony's not always there for me, but when he is, he really is. Okay. Derek Hubbard says, funny, 8 years ago, I thought that Baron Corbin would phase out and Mojo would develop. I was wrong. Yeah, again, I do NXT 8 years back, and I thought the same thing watching 8 years back as I did then. I actually thought both of them would flame out. Mojo especially. I did not think Mojo would hit the main roster, and I remember when he got drafted to SmackDown at a time when the main roster was struggling just a little bit. I thought, well, there's no reason to watch it now that guys like him are being called up. But I was surprised that that Corbin got to a point where he was worth calling up. When they called him up, when I saw him standing there in the WrestleMania Battle Royal, I said to my brother, that guy's going to win. He goes, I don't even know who that is. And I said, that's part of the reason he's going to win. This is going to be an elevation for him. I don't know if he's worth it, but he's going to get it. And Vince, of course, loved him because he's like, what, 6'8", 6'7", whatever it is. So in hindsight, not that surprising that he got a chance. But Baron, although he's not a main event talent, I think more than justified the call up with being able to be called upon at basically any spot in the card. He's somebody who really, really turned me around on them over time because I did not like him at all. And I've come to really appreciate his spot on the card. Brock Benningfield says, HBK, or someone behind the scenes, really likes Tony D'Angelo. I will tell you specifically that Shawn Michaels does like Tony D'Angelo. I don't know if he is the champion for him, if that's why Tony D is pushed as hard as he is, or if there's other people that are at the heart of that. But I can tell you from being on the media calls with Shawn Michaels that he just freaking loves Tony D'Angelo. Anything on either of those comments, Nate, or shall I move on?
All I want to know is did you ask HBK why he blocked me on Twitter?
I didn't. Feels like a dangerous game to ask him. I'll tell you what, he thought I was asking a hard-hitting question, and I was like, he must have thought it was worded differently because you kind of throw softballs to him in the media calls, because if you don't, you get blocked, as you know, because you don't even know why you got blocked.
I don't even know what I did. One day I saw something on Reddit about a tweet that Shawn Michaels made, and I clicked on it, and it's like, you can't see this. I'm like, wait, what? I'm blocked? What did I do? You're my hero.
Yeah.
Or was my childhood hero?
I don't know, man. Oh, he lost his smile when it came to you.
And he lost his smile in my backyard. That was in Lowell. I've been in that building 1,000,000 times.
Is that where that happened?
Lowell, Massachusetts. I wasn't there for it.
Wrestling.
I wasn't there for it, but the Lowell Memorial Auditorium.
6-woman action: Saul Ruca, Karmen Petrovic, and Lola versus Fallon, Henley, Jacy, Jayne, and Jazmyn. 12:53. This was the longest match on the show, and it was mostly a schmaz. This got messy a lot, and there were some spots that showed some light, real highs and real lows in this match. Yeah, when everybo's involved for half the match, I disengage. There's an NXT chant for a schmaz, and I'm like, this is okay. I'm getting old man right now, but that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, Henley pins Petrovic with the thing that she does. It's a finishing move, Nate, and certainly it has a name, but she did it. So there you go. That threesome they're kind of a thing. So even though these faces are all important in the grand scheme, it seems like there are a lot of women on this brand right now that are important in the grand scheme, which is weird because I feel like it was not that long ago that we were saying the women's division needs serious work. And now there's almost no seat at the table. But yeah, this 6-woman match, I don't know if there's any other stuff to roll in with this, but yeah, 6-woman action, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say that I didn't like the match, but I maybe it's just I too had a long day today. I found myself checking out a couple times during this. There were a lot of spots that were a little frenetic. Everybody's involved, and it's kind of hard to pay attention at those points to who the legal person is. So yeah, like I will admit, I found myself looking at my phone and doing a couple other things. Probably looking at Reddit or something like that while the match was going on. But that said, I do kind of like the story that they've been telling, the old guard versus the new guard. And even that is kind of hard for me to buy into because like Fallon, Henley, Jacy, Jayne, they've been there the longest at this point, but even in my mind, they're still new. They're still, and when I say new, it's probably because they're still on NXT. They haven't really gone up to the main roster. I think Fallon Henley may have had a match up on the main roster, and I know Jacy Jayne did too back in Toxic Attraction, but they've never had an official call up to the main roster. So it's they're both kind of new. Jazmyn Nix is part of like the veteran team is laughable because didn't she and they're trying to explain that away with with commentary and things like that, but I don't know, it doesn't quite work for me. I feel like they're basically trying to fit a square peg into a round hole because with Jazmyn Nix, not that she's not a great wrestler. I think she's actually progressing very, very well, but trying to tell me that she's a veteran in NXT or that she belongs with the veteran team is a little But again, as I'm saying that, I guess that is a way to get heel heat on them. So maybe that's what they're doing. More than likely, that's what they're doing. But the other three, Sol Ruca, Karmen Petrovic, Lola Vice, Sol Ruca and Lola Vice especially, I think that, and I keep saying this tonight, but I think the sky's the limit for these two. Karmen Petrovic, I think, is still a work in progress, partly just because she is so new to the roster, and she really hasn't been. This is probably the most prominent storyline that she's been put in, since what was it, the women's breakout tournament. So I mean, she was with Natalia. She was with Natalia for a little while too. So maybe that was the most prominent. I don't know. Regardless, she's still so new to the roster that it's kind of hard for me to pin where I see her going. But I don't dislike her. She is, admittedly, when we were talking a little bit earlier, where I couldn't remember, or I was so excited that I remembered Ren Sinclair's name. Karmen Petrovic is one that almost every week it takes me a few, I'm looking at her and I go, okay, I've seen her before, but I don't remember her name. And I feel like there are so many women on this show that are almost defaulting back. I'm almost afraid to say this, but they're almost defaulting back to like the Diva eras. Diva era. We have a lot of blonde women that just kind of have generic gear on this show. And it
let me get into a real weird area.
I love weird areas. Go for it.
There are a lot of hot women on this show right now, and they're dressing them up in that they know it. Like,
oh yeah,
we both mentioned Stevie Turner in our chat. That's what they're going for. Like, Shawn Michaels is a thirsty dude. We know that. So like that was known about him always, Like, he's married to one of the Nitro girls, Whisper, and it's because he had friends in WCW, and he was like, "Get me Whisper's number." Like he was just so hot for her. He sent a message about that. So it's a very thirsty time in NXT and in wrestling in general, more so than in a long time. And I wonder if you can have it both ways, because we got away with from that a lot when we started to see the women's revolution, and now we're seeing and now this is really hard to talk about and to talk
as a
about
white male, yes, it is hard to talk about
with any class and it's just it's hard to talk about, but they're asking us to talk about it. So it's kind of like when Toxic Attraction was doing what they were doing, and you don't want to talk about just the look and how hot it is or isn't, but they're asking us to think about that. So it kind of is on the table. Do you want to go on that, or do you want to run far in the other direction from that conversation?
No, I'll speak on it a little bit. I think I can do it tastefully enough. And I remember listening to Wade at one point, and I don't remember exactly what he was talking about or who he was talking about. It might have been Carmella. I don't remember, but and I know he's probably said this more than once, but sex definitely has a place in wrestling. Sex sells. It just does. But it's when it starts to become like it did in the Attitude Era. I mean, that there's a bit of a problem. I don't think there's a problem having a couple people on the show that is their character is to be attractive, hot, sexy. Why not, right? I mean, it's an archetype. It's a character. I don't think that there's a problem with that, but it's when you start getting a little bit too much, it does kind of almost feel a little, I'm going to use the word icky for lack of a better term right now. I'm watching wrestling to watch wrestling. I'm not necessarily, if I want to watch pretty women, there are other things that I can watch on the internet if you pick up what I'm putting down. So, like I said, that said, I don't think there's a problem with, a woman embracing her sexuality, her beauty, and kind of flaunting that, as her character. But, I don't necessarily want to see anybody forced into that situation either. I'd like that to be a more natural, natural type of a character for somebody. But anyway, there we go.
Let's talk about the most beautiful person on this show. Nate, I have a question. Do you believe in Joe Hendry? There he is.
Okay. I had to do it.
So
I do believe.
Yeah, you do believe. He had a concert. I saw the hype for this episode before I actually saw last week's episode, so I was like, "Oh, he's doing a concert." That's news to me. So not enough that he's a wrestler and a good-looking guy, but he can also sing. he can carry a tune. As a guitarist, he's a 3-chord dude. He's the guy that you saw playing the guitar, who broke out the guitar at your college party. He only knows a few chords, but he can sing, so he's kind of getting away with it. Ozon White says in the chat, WWE can't wait to sign this guy. Absolutely. Like, this is a talent exchange, but they're going to end up with Joe Hendry. They don't promote a guy this much. They don't make him the centerpiece of commercials in order to they're signing him. So I don't know what the height of him is yet. We've only seen him wrestle once or twice, and they've kept him in. They stashed him in a tag match, and he was fine. And they made him the first one out of that battle royal, which seems like ancient history now. But Azan continues, Joe Hendry will have a WWE contract in 2025. Mark my words. BJ says Joe is the total package. Yeah, he kind of is. And he's kind of in that LA Knight area where if he can wrestle, it's a bonus. If he can't, he's going to get by regardless. But I think he can. It's a basic move set, but that can be worked with. So he did his concert. He was very predictably attacked by all three members of Gallus because he did run them down. Booker T thankfully did not run in after he was shown in a kilt and tam on the screen, but good silly stuff from him, evoking Elias, but in a babyface context. So I believe in Joe Hendry. I think that this is maybe something big waiting to happen. This could be something we look back on and you're like, how did they miss on him? But man, I just don't see how this isn't something big waiting to happen, Nate.
No, I completely agree. And like, we talked about this a little bit last week after they announced the Joe Hendry concert. I think it was Azan who somebody asked last week. I think it was Azan, but I could be wrong. Asked us if we thought that this was going to be like a diss track on Gallus, and I'm like, that's kind of exactly where they're going to go with this. A lot of Joe Hendry's concerts have been, making, or actually, I think all of his concerts. Not that I ever watched them live, but at this point, I've looked them up. And I think all of them have been kind of dissing his opponents. So I figured that's exactly where this was going to go. This was such a fun segment. And a lot of times, you get these like weird musical segments or a non-wrestling segment that could potentially be a little campy or weird or whatever. And they don't go over well. But man, Joe Hendry right now, he's over like Rover. Partly, probably largely due to his theme song. I think he's even admitted that, a big part of his success is due to the theme song. But so what? I think it's carried him extremely well so far. WWE, I think, would be crazy not to try and sign this guy. And, like you said, they wouldn't put him in commercials for no reason. They wouldn't promote him the way that they've been promoting him if they didn't want to try and sign him. We're still seeing some of this crossover between TNA and NXT. On this episode, it was the Rascals and Joe Hendry. I don't know how much longer this crossover is going to continue for, but I hope it's for a little while. I want to see more of Joe Hendry at NXT. I know I could tune into TNA and watch him there, but being as I cover NXT, and NXT is one of the shows that I've consistently watched over, at least over the past 6 years or so. It's my bread and butter. So I would love to see him come in and do more with NXT. Like you said, the whole Gallus thing. Oh, Gene, you're absolutely right. Gene just comes in with the comment that his Royal Rumble entrance will be epic. And yes, it will. Yes, it will. But I forget what I was going to say now after that came up, but that happens very easily to just completely lose my train of thought. But yeah, right. I was saying the whole thing with Gallus interfering was very predictable. The beatdown was very predictable. This is probably going to wind up leading to a match between he and Joe Coffey down the line, with Gallus in Joe's corner. Maybe Joe winds up bringing a couple people from TNA to be in his corner. maybe he looks around and Javon Evans just offers to be in his corner, like he just offered to be Nathan Frazier and Axiom's partner last week. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that they could go with this, but regardless of how they go with it, I think it's insane for them to not capitalize on Joe Hendry's popularity right now. Even if he's not a contracted WWE wrestler, they have him at their disposal. Use him, because he's one of the biggest viral sensations right now in, I don't want to say indie wrestling because he's in TNA, but in non-WWE wrestling, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Azan says, funny they say Dutch Mantel instead of Zeb Coulter. It is, but he's so much more famous as Dutch Mantel than he is Zeb Coulter. Even if WWE proper only ever used him as Zeb Coulter. So that struck me too, but I mean, the rhyme was right there, so they had to do it. Azan said, is this a step down? Gallus has been treated as comedy this year with Joe Jacy and Joe Hendry this year. Gallus is, I don't know about comedy, but they're definitely low level. When they, man, NXT UK, I thought these guys were going somewhere, and so did they, because Joe Coffey was treated extremely well. Mark Coffey won the Heritage Cup. Wolfgang was a semifinalist in the NXT UK initial tournament for the championship, which was eventually won by Tyler Bate. So they believed in all these guys, and somewhere along the line, I guess
and
that
now
changed.
they believe in Joe Hendry.
Yep, they sure do, and they should. Javon Evans, he has parents. They like different wrestlers. His mom was a big John Cena guy, girl rather, and his dad was more of a Booker T fan. But this was just a little hype segment to get us to know him a little bit better, because he was pushed to the moon. So they kind of pumped the brakes on having him in there. Better to do this segment than to just have him beat somebody that is just mid-level. I thoroughly dug this segment, and this guy is larger than life, and this segment brought him a little bit down to earth and more relatable for me, Nate.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, Javon Evans, he burst onto the scene, and again, my buddy Jobin, who was on with me last week, one of the, I think the adjective he used to describe him was, man, he's bouncy. And he's absolutely right. Like, bouncy, I think, is the best way to describe Javon Evans. He does things that just seem inhuman. Again, I'll use the term, I think the sky's the limit for him. I think this segment did a lot to kind of humanize him a little bit, like you said. I like these. This wasn't quite one of those. Oh shit! What do they call them? The deep
prime
target.
Prime target. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't quite like a prime target type video where they really did a deep dive and it was kind of cinematic and things, but this was probably the next best thing. They really got into his childhood, his fandom into WWE, the fact that he would wait for his neighbors to go to work so him and his friends could jump the fence and use their giant trampoline to like practice on and things like that. Plus, I really liked the fact that he kept like looking off camera going, am I going to get in trouble for this? It kind of like, because he's thinking,
I like the fact that he said that he told his teachers to suck it.
Exactly. Like he thinks he's going to, the fact that he was just like, am I going to get in trouble because I told my teachers to suck? Who's going to get you in trouble? But it was still just that, that's so weird. Jobin just
there's an innocence to him.
No, Jobin just text messaged me and he literally just said the words that I said. I can't get in trouble for this, right? I don't know if you're watching, Jobin, but if you are, you spooked me out.
Nicely timed.
Yeah, weird timing. But but yeah, who's going to get him in trouble? He's a grown man. All these things happened so long ago. Statute of limitations and all of that. But I think that really worked to humanize him, because I mean, how many of us? I mean, I know I do. Like, you I don't know, you step on the grass when it says don't step on the grass, and you're like, oh crap, I'm gonna get in trouble, So, oh, Jobin totally is watching. Okay, hi Jobin. But yeah, so I think it was a great segment all around.
Azan says everyone in the locker room is giving Booker T the rub tonight, and continues, Booker's ego must be high tonight. I will argue that Booker's ego is pretty high all the time. That's actually one of the reasons he was always one of my favorite wrestlers. Booker is whatever he is on the mic, and sometimes that's the best and sometimes that's just the worst, but I loved him as
Booker
a worker.
OT.
Azan also asked, is Javon and Oba the end game? I hadn't thought about that, but
I hadn't either, but I like
now I know how much I need that match. I had not put them in the same room, let alone the same sentence. But yeah, Javon getting bouncy against Oba because he has to. Oh, mama, that could be pretty good.
Yeah.
Azan, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I think that is likely. There were two other matches on this show. Cedric Alexander defeated Brooks Jensen. I don't believe Cedric ever won a singles match on this show, so now he's ahead of Bobby Fish. That was 5.5 minutes. Sean Spears was upset with Brooks Jensen because Brooks Jensen turned heel and he's still not winning. Kendal Gray faced Jaida Parker. This was an excuse for Kendal Gray to slam Miles Bourne again, and an excuse to show us Jaida Parker, which, thanks. 4 minutes and 2 seconds, Jaida defeats Kendal. Those are the two matches we didn't talk about. Jada's such a natural. She's so mean and alluring. She's awesome. So I try to stop short of going crazy for Jaida Parker, but even in the initial breakout tournament where they didn't even make a big thing about her, I thought she was not like ready, but certainly ready for NXT TV. So on these two matches, before I get to the last few backstage segments.
Sure. So Brooks Jensen versus Cedric Alexander. I mean, I liked the match. I'm really starting to dig what they're doing with Brooks Jensen. Like I said, I've said a couple times, I wasn't really super high on them, kind of leaning into, him falling into, substance abuse and things like that. And I don't know if they ever actually came out and said that, or if they just insinuated it, but still. But he's totally got a different edge to him right now. And I think his loss tonight is really going to light a fire under his ass. If it's not the loss that's going to light a fire under his ass, it might be Sean Spears. Because like you said, Sean Spears was not super happy that he lost his match, as he was ringside for it. I could see that happening. Sean Spears kind of giving him a pep talk next week. And maybe even a little bit of dissension in the ranks between the two of them, and they kind of have a little bit of a feud between themselves or something before Brooks realizes, oh, Sean Spears is right. I need to step up my game. I need to get my head in the game, or whatever. It could certainly be an interesting angle here, and kind of a nice story progression, character progression for Brooks Jensen. Azan just came in and said Brooks Jensen and Sean Spears could lead to tag team gold. Maybe I hadn't quite thought about that, or put that put them like together in a tag team that would make it to the tag team champions, but why not? Why not? I could get behind that. But yeah, I feel like this match is really more of a way to further the progression of Brooke Jensen's story. But it also kind of gave us a bit of a reason to care more about Cedric Alexander. Yeah, he just came back to NXT, or came to NXT. I guess he showed up in NXT before, but it's kind of nice to see him in a bit of a, it's not a super prominent role, but at least doing something. He wasn't really doing much on the main roster, so I'm glad to see him here down here in NXT as part of a storyline and kind of getting some halfway decent TV time and some decent matches. We've only seen him in a couple so far, but I'm hoping that he's going to be able to be in quite a few longer matches than just 5.5 minutes, as we saw here tonight. But him going over, I think, is going to help to elevate him a little bit. So I think that the match served two purposes: to further Brooke's story and to kind of get a win under Cedric's belt, so he can kind of move on to bigger and better things eventually. The other match, Kendal Gray versus Jaida Parker. I got to admit, I was pretty impressed with Kendal Gray here. There was still some greenness and again, not maybe ready for like main roster, but I still thought she was really smooth and pretty crisp with a lot of her moves. It helps that she's in the ring with somebody like Jaida Parker, who I feel like has more or less always had a pretty good showing. I can't think of a time where I said to myself, "Ooh, Jaida didn't have a good night." So that certainly helps. But yeah, Kendal Gray, she kind of stood out to me here tonight. I don't know what her ceiling is quite yet. We haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of her up to this point, at least on NXT TV. I know she showed up a little bit more on Level Up, but yeah, I'm curious to see where she goes and what the ceiling is for her. Jaida Parker, though, I hate to go back to the phrase I've used all night, saying "sky's the limit," but I think it may be for her as well. She absolutely has the charisma. She's fantastic on the mic. She kind of knows how to work her sass a little bit to get under people's skin, and it's a great character for TV. So between her in ring work and her charisma on the mic, and the third thing is the look. She certainly has the look to be to be a star. So I think that could be in the cards for Miss Jaida Parker.
Azan said Jaida Parker is outshining both members of OTM. She is. They're very cool. They have a lot of presence. So I'm hoping it comes together in the ring for them, because I like the presence that they're bringing. Reverend Keith,
I always like presence.
Says Cedric looks like the Cedric of old, a Ring of Honor Cruiserweight Classic days. And I was thinking that he looked like he physically looks very different, but he's starting to bring the presence that he had in those days. So again, on NXT 8 years back, we are covering the Cruiserweight Classic because 8 years ago today is when it was happening. We were in the middle of the first round 8 years ago today. We had already seen Cedric win once. He will lose in the second round to, I want to say somebody like Kota Ibushi, somebody big. And that's when the audience chants, "Please sign Cedric." And they already had plans to do so. So Trips comes out and he nods, and he's got like a little contract notebook or whatever, and a big moment. Still the coolest thing that has ever happened involving Cedric. And I love Cedric. I think he's underutilized. So, so I don't know that I don't know if he looked like the Cedric of old, but he was awesome like the Cedric of old, just in kind of a different way. Hassan says Zack Sabre in the CWC was wild if WWE had him nowadays. Yes, I am a New Japan completist. I see every match that Zack Sabre Jr. has wrestled for the last 8 years in New Japan, and saw one yesterday that was fantastic against Shota Umino. He's so good. He's still so good. He's better than he was, and he was great there. Reverend Keith does mention, yes, it was Ibushi who beat Cedric on that night, which I will be covering in like 2 weeks on NXT 8 years back. You can email us at PWTorchNXT@gmail.com. This is from Kevin Catani. Salutations, gents. Night 1 of the Great American Bash. Good stuff, am I right? In case declarations need to be made, I unabashedly believe in Joe Hendry and love how quickly the NXT fans have taken to him based on the crossover work he's been doing, and will undoubtedly continue through the Rumble. When he does eventually sign, will he go right to the main roster, or will he spend some time in Orlando? Lastly, focusing on a recent NXT alum, do you think Tiffy cashes in at SummerSlam, or will they draw it out until there's a face champ, assuming Nia wins? Thanks as always. Go VIP and listen to 8YB. Office hours are now over. The Professor, Kevin P. Catani, PhD. Yeah, I believe in Joe Hendry. Everybody's talking Rumble. Nate, I'm normally the guy who says that everybody's going to make their debut at the Rumble, but this time I'm not. I think that if they sign him, he will spend some time in NXT, but it could be a Jade Cargill situation where most of it's behind the scenes. And they don't overexpose him on TV before they decide to do more with him on the main roster, because something big really could happen with this guy. That is where I think he is. Can't believe that's where we're talking about a guy that I did not know about really 2 months ago. I only knew his name. I did not know what he looked like. Now I do. As far as
his name, he appeared.
I think that Tiffany is going to carry that briefcase for a while. And part of that is because the way they're gimmicking the briefcase getting beaten up and her having tape on it. And I think this is a long-term story. I think that there's going to be something that goes on, whether Nia wins or not. I don't think Tiffany cashes in. Like this will end in a Tiffany Nia match. And Tiffany, my girl, pride of Prior Lake, Minnesota, which is, as I put my hand out like this, I'm basically touching Prior Lake. I'm right by it. I think that this will end with Tiffany and Nia. However that goes, I just don't want Nia to be champion. That's I'm going to throw to you, Nate. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really either, but I do agree with you for the rest of the Tiffany stuff. So, there's that. With Joe Hendry though, I think it all depends on, okay, if WWE does sign him, I think what they should do with him is going to be dependent on his viral popularity. So if he's still at the height of his viral popularity when he is signed to WWE and he's able to make his WWE debut, or TNA allows him to do a lot more work with WWE or whatever, if he's still at the height of his viral popularity, bypass NXT, put him in the Rumble, and or debut him on the main roster in some way, some big way to capitalize on that. Because being a WWE fan is different than being a wrestling fan. And I don't know if your average WWE fan is going to believe in Joe Hendry or even knows who the hell Joe Hendry is. it's your NXT fan is typically more up to date with what's going on in other companies, what's going on in the indie scene. So I think they'll pop for him more if his viral popularity is kind of starting to wane, and it's not nearly what it is like it is today, then maybe debut him in NXT, build him up a little bit more, and then like promote the hell out of him coming up to the main roster, and explain, they'll have all these vignettes and things that they can draw from his NXT run that they can show on the main roster to show your main roster audience why they should believe in Joe Hendry. So, like I said, I think it's going to depend on where his popularity is when they decide, if and when they decide to debut him on their main roster.
Zahn adds, Joe Hendry is not that young of a guy. He's not. He's 36. But Damian Priest is 41. Batista was upper 30s when he won his first championship, maybe even young 40s. I can't remember. So it can happen. LA Knight is older. So,
and hey, Joe Hendry's my age. He's not that old.
Yeah. If he was my age.
If he's your age, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to be able to fight that at the beginning of this podcast. I no longer can. All right. MSK, Nate, they were stoned. That's the joke. They like the ganj. Okay, Axiom and Nathan Fraser in a scene with LWO, and then Robert Stone and Stevie Turner. That was the thing that happened. Tatum Paxley and Kalani Jordan. Tatum really wants Kalani Jordan to play with dolls, and she wouldn't. But Wendy Chu saw her playing with dolls. I can't believe that is a series of sentences I just spoke, but it is something that I saw on this wrestling show. Those are the last few segments. Oh, and Pete Dunne, he's got an issue with Trick Williams, so we'll see that next week too. So there you go. That's the show. Tell me if you've got. Azan says, why is LWO still hanging around NXT? I don't know. I didn't know they were. It's very weird that they're there. I actually just covered Raul Mendoza's Cruz del Toro's first match in the Cruiserweight Classic, which he loses, and then he goes on to be signed, and he loses match after match after match after match for like 2 years before he gets the most minor of pushes. But they must have liked him because he's still there. Nate, on the other cleanup of the show.
Sure. So the Kalani Jordan, Tatum Paxley, Wendy Chu segment, I don't know what to make of this. Like, I really like the Tatum Paxley character right now, being kind of this creepy stalker, kind of almost like a goth Mickey James when she was stalking Trish Stratus in a way. I dig it. It's not a unique character by any stretch, but I think she's taking this character and kind of making it her own. But this whole fascination with dolls is just a little weird, I guess. But it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be weird. And it's supposed to kind of give you that little bit of a creepy feeling that Kalani was feeling when she started to kind of like look at the dolls before she noticed Wendy Chu behind her. Nightmare Wendy Chu, as I've been calling her. I don't know if they've actually, I know they've said something about her being a nightmare on TV or whatever, but I've just been sticking to calling her Nightmare Wendy Chu. I like it better than the regular Wendy Chu, the sleepy Wendy Chu that we've had. It's a bit more of a sinister character, a bit more of a dark character. I'm usually drawn to those characters, the dark and sinister. So I like it, but I don't know where they're going to go with it. I don't know. It certainly has a ceiling. I don't think she's going to turn into the female Undertaker by any stretch with this gimmick. It could. Maybe I'll be eating my words in 8 years, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see where this angle goes. So the other one, Pete Dunne, I really liked this segment with Pete Dunne. He talked about, how all of his partners, couldn't match up. They're all gone. They've been, Sheamus got hurt, although he's back now. Ridge Holland couldn't hang, even though he's back now. Tyler Bates out with an injury, which I didn't even know until they showed it on TV. And so, yeah, like in the end, they even addressed the fact that he got a stupid nickname, and they called it a stupid nickname. I loved that because, God dang it, I hated the fact that they called him Butch. He's Pete Dunne. He's always been Pete Dunne, at least in WWE. I don't know if he used another name on the Indies or anything like that, but in WWE, he's always been Pete Dunne. The Bruiserweight, that was a great gimmick. I don't know what Vince was thinking with the whole Butch thing, but Vince is gone, so they were able to call it a stupid nickname. So I think this is a really good way to build Pete Dunne up to be the next opponent for Trick Williams, kind of take him out of that babyface character that he's been in for the past, I don't know, handful of years or whatever, and allow him to be a more heel version of himself. And I think he did a great job in that segment. He's not always my favorite on the mic, so maybe that's why they didn't do it as a live segment. They did it, as a pre-record. But I think it was effective, and it's kind of making me look forward to seeing what we're going to get out of a heel Pete Dunne. And then as far as the Rascals go, I like the fact I've always loved the Little Rascals, like the Little Rascals, and that they take the thing from the Little Rascals and everything, and the Rascals treehouse and stuff. So I thought it was a cool segment, to take something that was, originated in another company, which WWE has never liked to do. Take something that's originated in another company, bring it to WWE, and then even kind of allude to the fact that, hey, we've done this before, but never on WWE TV. They didn't come out right and say it, but they said it. And it kind of just blows my mind that that's where we are with WWE in today's day and age without that crazy old man at the helm. Again, thought it was an effective segment. I like the fact that they kind of, imply that they're stoned just simply by doing that 70s show thing and going around in a circle around, the table or whatever. Also like the fact that they were like, hey, it's PG around here. So they couldn't even allude to the fact that they were getting stoned, but you get the green background, what's going on if you're paying attention or older than 10 years old. Maybe 12. I don't know. 10 might be too young. I don't know. I don't deal with kids. So whatever's age appropriate for them to know what marijuana is. Like I said, I think it was a fun overall segment. I think Azan came up and said that Trey has got his talking ability down and that Trey's a great hype man for MSK. MSK just being just Wesley, and I always want to say George Wentz, and I don't know why I want to say George Wentz. His name is not George Wentz.
Well, George Wendt is Norm on Cheers.
I know Norm on Cheers, but and I don't know why I keep wanting to go there.
I have met him, by the way, and
why does that not surprise
believe he would be a pro wrestler?
No, God, no.
I saw him on Broadway.
Norm would not be a pro wrestler. But yeah, like I said, I think it was a fun segment. It was an effective segment. To kind of keep the Rascals fresh, and I don't know, I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it.
All right, folks, I'm damn near sure that is our show. I'm Kelly Wells. You can find me on social media at Spooky Milk. Great American Bash. Does it feel special enough to be Great American Bash? I don't know. But if not, whatever. Maybe next week will. Nate, who are you?
To be honest with you, I forgot we were even talking about a named show. So that should probably tell you what the special factor was of Great American Bash Night 1. I am Nate Lindberg. You can check the things that I do out at natelindberg.com. Follow me on Twitter at Nate Lindberg. Not that I really do much on Twitter. I mostly just talk to Kelly in a DM. But if you want to engage with me on Twitter, by all means, do so.
Cheers. And that is it until Great American Bash continues next week.
Peace.